And one of the things I want to touch on uh, came up in my time as a state representative in Iowa. See, I sat on the transportation committee for 3 years in Iowa in my 4 years in the state house. And, you know, I remember looking back on 2016 and the idea that we heard from the administration, our current administration now, and Democrats and Republicans all across the country talking about caring about the same things like Made in America and making sure our workers are paid fair wages and we have opportunities for working class families. We heard that again across all sides of the aisle. However, you can imagine my surprise then just a few months later when I went back to the state house in the early of 2017 and I was sitting on the transportation committee, and one of the first bills that gets brought up was HF 203, and it was a bill that would authorize the use of primary road funds for secondary road funds and municipal systems. So basically, this was a tool to bring in the federal dollars that would typically have gone just directly to our cities and our counties, which would have Davis-Bacon and Made in America attached to them. Instead, go through our state first, and I am from Iowa, where we do not have prevailing wage or Made in America provisions, and then those dollars would go out to our cities and our counties. You can imagine my concern and the concern of a lot of the folks that I worked with in Iowa. Now, you know, I know one of the arguments was that our cities and our counties needed the help, especially with the paperwork and, you know, what comes with that for getting federal dollars. And I want to make sure that we're addressing that, making that easier for our cities and our counties to be able to, regardless if you're in a big city or in a rural community, to access those dollars. And I want to know if there's anything that you guys are looking at to be able to, that we should be adding to this transportation bill to make sure that we do that. Secondly, I want to know if you have any ideas, specifically Mr. Clark or Mr. Millar, I know this may be something that you've looked into a little bit, about how do we make sure that if we are making a very large investment in federal dollars going out to our states, which I hope we are doing, we desperately need it, how do we make sure that those dollars are 100% then going with those Davis-Bacon provisions and also those Made in America provisions? Because quite frankly, our economy depends on it, our states depend on it, and I just want to make sure that we are doing this the right way. So if you all have any comments, I'd appreciate that.
I think that's an excellent question. Thank you. Some of it is just insisting on things like Davis-Bacon, but I think there's a larger set of issues here. People have talked about ride-hailing services a lot. There was a piece in the Washington Post op-ed page just a couple of days ago that was amusing but also very instructive, written by, I believe, by a writer from the Cato Institute, which is a fairly conservative group of people. And her point was, she told a story about people selling their cars because they're going to rely on the ride-hailing services and saying that just isn't going to work. And her ultimate point was the ride-hailing services are losing money hand over fist, and they're doing it because they've got deep venture capital pockets to support it. But in the meantime, they are depressing the wages of what traditionally were not great jobs, but decent jobs for taxi drivers and other kinds of people. I don't know what the answer is for the federal government's role there, but I think we've got to pay attention because you're absolutely right. There are lots and lots of forces driving us to a race to the bottom in terms of working class living standards. And transportation traditionally has been a sector where people make a decent living. And I think the federal government needs to look carefully at how we make sure transportation continues to provide decent livings for people, and it doesn't become how we play a beggar thy neighbor policy to drive working class living standards down further and further, provide an inexpensive utility to middle class and upper middle class people.
Thank you. And Mr. Miller, do you have anything to add, especially in regards to the state part of it?
Well, I would, what Mr. Clark said, and I think what we look at quite often, we're asked by local governments, would you take the federal money that we get, because it's so difficult to administer, would you take it and spend it at the state level and send state money to us? The problem we have is that we need our state dollars to match the federal dollars that comes to us. It's a very constrained pot of money. I think with what comes to us from the federal government comes to us with Davis-Bacon, made by America. Those provisions are in it. The state money that we have many of the same provisions, so we don't have that particular issue. I think it's important that we're all contributing. Again, the partnership, the federal, the state, the local, and I would encourage you to look at maintenance of effort. We're investing heavily as a state. Our gas tax has gone up. We're making heavy investments. If more federal money comes, that doesn't give us the ability, it shouldn't give us the ability to take our foot off the throttle. We need to be doing that, and local government needs to be doing that as well. We are today. Increased federal investment should come with an assurance that that state and local partnership is going to maintain, be in place.
Thank you very much.